it's one of these things. Sometimes you could be like revisionist history, be like, oh, who couldn't have seen that coming? But let's be honest when we talk about the Raiders in a division this year that was going to have Andy Reid, Sean Payton, and Jim Harbaugh as your three opposing head coaches. You're countering with Antonio Pierce, who had never even been a defensive coordinator at the NFL level, who had a middling performance, not terrible, but not great, as the interim head coach the year before. How did you think this was going to go? In a division with Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert and even like first round pick for the Broncos, Bo Nix, you're countering with journeyman Gardner Minshew, hoping to steal away some more Minshew magic, and or Aiden O'Connell. How could anybody look at that and think that this was going to go well? Gee, I wonder why the Raiders sucked this past season. And like Antonio Pierce, similar to Gerard Mayo, there was a lot of controversy about them getting fired after one full season at the helm. Pierce obviously had a little bit more because of the interim run in 2023. But, to me, this is an example of, did they get a quick hook? And maybe too quick of a hook? You could certainly argue that. But is it more of a reflection of, you gave them the quick hook because, frankly, they weren't cut out for the job and they hadn't paid enough dues as coaches and weren't prepared for it? I think that's the bigger problem here, right? He had never been a defensive coordinator at the NFL level. You're skipping levels with a guy without a ton of coaching experience in general. I know he's a former player, but damn, like being a player and being a coach are two vastly different things, right? And like even the way leadership looks in those different roles. So you were putting Antonio Pierce in a bad spot. The division was going to be tough as it was. And then, a few years ago you had Rich Bisaccia actually helped lead the Raiders to the playoffs as the interim coach, right? But you didn't bring him back because you just had to hire Josh fucking McDaniels. And maybe that was a bit of the decision-making process here was you wanted to have some stability. You wanted to go look for another head coach. But, yeah, like this was not going to be good. And then you give Pierce this kind of garbage-ass roster and quarterback situation, and you're expecting big things like Mark Davis. Are you crazy? And when I look at your haircut, I say, yeah, you probably fucking are. And I think, like, most Raiders fans, unless they were being really delusional, had to know that this season wasn't going to go well. But here's what's got to be the bitterest pill to swallow. It's one thing to be bad. But if you're going to be bad all the way. Don't half-ass sucking. It's like when you've got a girl giving you some sloppy top, but it's not really sloppy top, and she's kind of half-assing it. At that point, you'd rather her either like you fully commit, bitch, or you stop wasting my time kind of thing. Like, and I could take care of it myself. You get what I'm saying, fellas? Like, that should resonate, I would hope, a little bit. And that's what the Raiders were. Like after week 15, they were 2-12 and in control of their own destiny for the top pick. Basically, lose out and it's yours. Lose out and it's yours. But Antonio Pierce couldn't even fucking get that right. Because this team then won meaningless games against the Jaguars and the Saints, and it dashed all of those hopes. And somebody might say, well, none of these games in the NFL are meaningless. And you know what? That's true. And here's what I'll counter with. It absolutely had meaning and a lot of significance because winning those two games like dumb dicks from a bigger picture organizational standpoint could have set the Raiders back years. Congratulations. How happy are you that you won those games? Big picture, they don't fucking matter. I mean, I go on and on, right? Like they let Josh Jacobs walk. It's like the trading of Devontae Adams, a 32nd ranked rushing game, like, wasn't going to be a good year for the Raiders. But there were some positives there, right? It certainly wasn't the running game. You let Josh Jacobs walk and he couldn't run the ball with the shit. Alexander Madison was your leading rusher. He had like 420 rushing yards. But Jacoby Myers had over 1,000 yards receiving. Brock Bowers had a special rookie season. One of those ones that can garner you some offensive rookie of the year votes. Like, to get that type of performance out of him with the quarterback situation that the Raiders had, really, really solid stuff. But the defense was kind of middle of the road in terms of yards allowed, bottom third in points allowed. They only got 7.5 sacks from Max Crosby, so it was a bit of a down year for him. Only a 4.5 sacks from 2023 7th overall pick Tyree Wilson. Frankly, you need more production out of him. A previous big money free agent signing Christian Wilkins only played 5 games. So guys that you're looking at on the defensive front to really carry a big burden there and make life on opposing quarterbacks difficult. Crosby just wasn't that productive compared to the recent history. Tyree Wilson wasn't incredibly productive, and Wilkins just wasn't playing very much to be productive, right? And, so not surprisingly, the team moves on from Antonio Pierce. He should have never been promoted to the permanent role anyways, but they did it. And, one of the things you could point to, like, why have the Raiders been so bad for most of the past 2 decades? There's a variety of different reasons, right? It all started with Al Davis, obviously. He ran him into the fucking ground, but he's been deceased for 13 plus years. Like, it's not just him now. But one of the problems is the lack of long-term stability. Like, you go and hire John Gruden, give him a 10-year contract, and then a couple years later some, racist emails of the past pop up and he's gone. And then you promoting Bisaccia, and then he's gone because you just had to bring in Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler together, and then a year and a half later they're fucking gone. And you're promoting Antonio Pierce, and he's gone. Like, I can go on and on and on, right? A clear lack of stability at both head coach and general manager. Not a good spot to be in. So, for a team that really needed some long-term stability at head coach, because it's one of their biggest problems, the answer to those problems is hiring 74-year-old fucking Pete Carroll? A team where a major problem is that every 2 years or so you're going out and looking for a head coach. So your way to address that problem is to hire another guy that very likely means in 2 to 3 years you will have to hire yet another head coach. I don't care how much of a positive spin Raiders fans try to put on this shit. This is fucking stupid. Oh, he's a high energy guy. Okay, that's great. This is also going to be his 4th NFL head coaching job. We're in uncharted territory here. As soon as he coaches a game this season, he will be the oldest head coach in NFL history. And by a bid over Romeo Crennel. And every game that goes along, he will just continue to be an even oldest coach in NFL history. Like, how is that a good thing? How can that possibly be the type of precedent you want to set? You're bringing in the type of coach that, to me, has a 2 to 3 year window. So if you're going to do that, you need to be in a spot where you are a contender for a 2 to 3 year window and you're going all in. And that's why you're bringing Pete Carroll in to be a difference maker. The Raiders are none of fucking that. Like, they should be bottoming out. And until they get the quarterback to build around, none of this shit matters. And instead they're hiring Pete Carroll. What are you going to do? Bring in Aaron Rodgers? Yeah, it's bringing the 41-year-old. Like, what a dumpster fire. And even if you say, like, Pete Carroll is certainly a significant upgrade over Antonio Pierce, I absolutely agree. He is. From Jump Street, you will just win more games in 2025 because Pete Carroll is infinitely better than Antonio Pierce. And even with that said, you look at the bigger context, who the hell cares? Where are you going with it, right? Now, if you're saying, hey, you are looking for Pete Carroll to lead a quick turnaround because you want to be respectable and you want to be competitive immediately with the Chiefs and the Chargers and the Broncos in the division, we got some positive news there, right? The Raiders have over $90 million in cap space. I expect them to be very aggressive, and like, if going after an Aaron Rodgers is one of the things, that could be it, right? You also look at them. They've got pick 6, pick 37 in round 2. They've got pick 68 and 73 in round 3. So, like, there's some good draft pick capital, some premium draft capital that the Raiders have at their disposal, along with a lot of cap space. So it could certainly facilitate a quick turnaround. It absolutely can. But is it going to be a quick enough turnaround and a significant enough turnaround to justify hiring the oldest head coach in NFL history? No. In terms of their offseason needs, like, we all know what number 1 is. It's quarterback. Like, how stupid it was to win those games against the Jags and Saints. Because even if you're not super impressed with any of the quarterbacks in this draft class, which I can understand, at least put yourself in a position to where you have the option to take one of them. And right now, if you're the Raiders, you're hoping that a Shador or a Cam drops to you at 6, or at least drops to like a 4, and you could leap up and maybe trade up with the Patriots to make sure you get your guy. That feels like a pretty big hope and wish at this point. It could happen. Crazier shit has happened, right? But it feels like a pretty big hope and wish. But this team's got to get the young quarterback to build around. Now, what they'll probably do instead is they'll sign somebody like a Russell Wilson, a Justin Fields, and Aaron Rodgers, and they'll go in a different direction because that's what dumb organizations do. And make no mistake about it, the Raiders are one of the dumbest organizations today in the NFL. They are. Like, if that offends you as a Raiders fan, that's not my problem. You know it's true. But even beyond quarterback, like letting Josh Jacobs walk and having no contingency plan in place was really dumb. They need a big-time running back. And then, Jacoby Myers had a great season. Brock Bowers had a great season, but they could still use another weapon at wide receiver. And then, to me, it's like after that, they've invested a lot on the defensive front. Now they got to fix the back seven of that defense. That linebacking core needs some improvement, and that secondary certainly does too. Yeah, like, I don't know, man. I don't know what else to say about the Raiders at this point. Sure, they hired a qualified head coach. They absolutely did. Was he the right head coach for their moment in time in this organization, in their situation? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Are they very potentially going to go down one path when they should be going down the other path? Absolutely. I just don't know. But, hey, all that cap space, some premium picks. Like, crazier shit has happened. That's all I'm going to say.